Originally called Basically Throw Your Head at Stuff the Game, this prototype aimed at turning my horrible experience in college physics into a fun physics platformer. I've created my own Donkey Kong Kingdom system, which I'll explain in a moment. One new core mechanic, 2 new enemies, a new platform mechanic, a new art cover for my game, and I started learning digital art, so I'll be ditching the pixel art style. I'm an indie game designer developing a fun game inspired by math concepts. This video is kind of a refresh, so I'm just gonna talk about how I got into game development. The evolution of my current game, Starhead, which is a head-throwing physics platformer. Long story short, I was really creative as a kid, but life gets in the way. And I just neglected that side of my personality for the majority of my life until a few years ago. I've always kind of liked building stuff, and I was pretty good at math. And not to the level where I saw things in a fourth dimension or anything like that. So like any other lost soul, I just kind of went to school and studied mechanical engineering because that's just all what I knew what to do. After some character development, life lessons and such, I've come to realize working that as a job for 40 hours a week just was not for me. It just hit me halfway into school, but I was still kind of lost, so I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And then 2019, I looked at the tutorial on how to make a game in Python, and then the rest was history. So as a math-inclined slacker, I figured it'd be ironic if I just made video games about math, but in my way. I wouldn't make the answer a pop quiz to do something type of game, though no shame in those type of games. I just feel like there's other ways we can kind of reintroduce ideas in in a less industrious manner. Essentially, you play as a little robot with an indestructible head. You can use your head as a platforming mechanic or as a weapon. Like any other platformer, you go from point A to point B, hit some kind of glowing box or object at the end, and boom, you're done. This level exit was inspired by one of my favorite games on the Wii, which is Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. As for the core mechanics, there are 3 power-ups that change the bounciness level of your head, making for some interesting puzzles. This was my way of turning elastic collisions into a fun game mechanic. I eventually started finally reading into game design, only to realize that I should have started on this sooner. But as a result, I've created a lot of mechanics that ended up just getting thrown away. At the same time, I was also trying to improve my productivity, where weeks would go by where I wouldn't even touch the game, and now it feels like a crime to not even do something. Before I explain the plan of the Kingdom system, let me first talk about how the bosses are in this game. So after I made one boss, I had some playtesters, and it was a bit too intense, but it was at the complexity that I liked creating it in. Eventually, I came up with the idea of splitting up these complex bosses into sub-bosses, or not necessarily sub-bosses, but smaller and simpler versions of themselves. I just increased the intensity and puzzle behind them in each variation. If you've played Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, I think you know what I'm talking about, as there's kind of copies of each bosses, but each one is a bit tougher than the last, and they add a new mechanic. What makes this system stand out is that a series of level kind of acts as one level, and that's what you would call a kingdom. And you get points by doing stuff, and then when you get to the boss level, your score essentially influences how much health you get. My art in my previous games haven't really been the greatest. I didn't really know what I was doing most of the time. Animation took longer than I thought it was. I mean, it's surprising that people are really out here drawing the same characters several times for one animation. And then I eventually just decided to purchase assets for the time being. It ended up working out well for me because I ended up getting a lot of views on Reddit, so I'm glad I made that decision. And then after that, I decided to go for the full scope of the game. So the reason why I chose pixel art was because I thought it'd be easier. I mean, in my head I was like, oh, you just put squares next to each other and boom, you're done. It didn't help that I started at 32 by 32 not having any experience. So yeah, you can see how that kind of played out. I plan on using rigging animation, which doesn't really look that good in pixel art in my opinion. I'd also like my own custom environments as well. And in terms of like sharing my content, which I know I'm not the greatest at, but I'm trying to get better, it would be easier to kind of like share stuff when I actually have good visuals. And I'm not gonna lie to you, this has been really fun. I've enjoyed drawing. It definitely helped that like I took this course on Skillshare that showed me how to paint. Plan on doing at least one environment by myself before considering hiring for someone to do the rest. And I'd like to get this game out sooner than later. Nothing wrong with pixel art. I think this art style looks cool. It's just I don't particularly enjoy making them. I know I could hire for these things, but I really want to like go through the process myself to understand that flow. So when the time comes where like I do hire or look for someone else to do things, I know specifically like how I want things to be made or formatted so that I can like configure them in game development. There's definitely a lot of things that I left out, but you know, I guess I'll try to revisit those in like future videos if the content asks for it or demands it. What I can say is that I'm treating this game as like a fun learning experience. Kind of got this from Quentin Tarantino in like an interview I saw one day while I was procrastinating on YouTube. And it was like this whole idea of like his first movie was his school of film. And so for me, whether pass or fail, this game is my school of game design. So yeah, if you made it this far, leave a like. Feel free to follow if you want to see where this goes. I hope this video provided you with some kind of value. I don't know what that would be. Maybe you're just curious on like how some other people are doing when they're trying to make games. I don't know. So, but yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching. Goodbye. Just a little bit of improv. So yeah, let's see. So like any other lost soul, I just kind of went to school and studied mechanical engineering because that's just, I guess that's just all what I knew what to do. Boring ass motherfucker. Boring ass. And then I eventually just decided to purchase assets for the time being. Lazy ass. Not a true solo dev happiness. Long story short, I was really creative as a kid, but you know, life gets in the way. Boy, hush. Shut up. What are you? Cat. Stop lying, man. Stop lying. Why are you lying? Or why are you lying?